Hi everyone, my name's Emma. I'm a third year medical student studying in Sydney, Australia, and this evening I'm here with my yellow shirt and my pinkish lights because I want to talk about this book, Emotional Female by Yumiko Kadota. So this book actually means quite a lot to me as a young woman studying medicine in Australia. If you don't know the story of Yumiko, she was an unaccredited plastic surgery registrar when she was essentially overworked past the point of burnout, past the point of any sort of levels of physical exhaustion, to where she finally had to give up her pathway. And all of this happened sort of towards the end of 2018, where then she published a blog post, and that blog post was picked up by local news, and it was sort of plastered everywhere at the beginning of February 2019. I started medicine the middle of February 2019. So her story I have kind of watched unfold in the public eye since I started medicine, and that has been really interesting. And I had read her original blog post when it was talked about in the news. I read all of the news articles sort of following it, and I was sort of following her journey since then on social media as well. So when she started talking about this book, I became very, very excited. Essentially, it is an autobiography sort of detailing her time from medicine through internship, residency, and then her pathway through unaccredited registrar trying to get onto the training program, as well as through her trauma and the point of exhaustion and burnout and absolute distress when she had to quit, as well as her recovery up to this point and what she's doing now. And it's a very interesting story of her struggles with sexism, racism, and abuse within the medical training system, and what sort of she has learned from her journey and what she can pass on to sort of future students, current people working. And it just really is an honest retelling of her experience, and I think it's a really valuable read. So I guess I'll start with why I like the book, and I won't include any spoilers, although it's not really a spoiled story, because if you're here, you probably already know the general gist of her story. But I guess I can see a lot of myself and the lessons that I'm currently trying to learn in the younger Yumiko when she was in med school. And I can see a lot of her motivations in myself. Some of the things that she describes are sort of things I wasn't able to already put into words, sort of as to why maybe surgery is something that interests me, and why medicine in general interests me. We have the same size hands, which was kind of cool for one of the quotes that she's written. I have tons of things highlighted in here, and I'll share a few. But yeah, I guess I can just see myself on a similar path, but in a better way. And I say in a better way because I have people like her sharing her story, kind of highlighting red flags or things to watch out for. I tell a lot of people when I recommend this book that it kind of feels like an older sister or an older mentor or a peer kind of telling you how they went and sort of the pitfalls along the way in the system to watch out for, and maybe things that you could change if you were trying to go down the same path. She never writes as if you shouldn't go into surgery or medicine, as if this is a bad thing. It's never to deter someone. It is just a simple, honest retelling of her story. So I guess in a small way, as a young woman in medicine, sort of at the beginning of my journey, so the first few chapters, it kind of affirmed some of my experiences and affirmed what I thought some of that pathway may be. It was also the first time that I've had really simply the pathway to surgery explained in sort of realistic terms, so that was good. But also just the general pathway, the hard work, the sort of system you have to navigate, the hoops you have to jump through. It was affirming to know that now, as well as know what to dodge or what to avoid, while she honestly shared her story. So there's this one bit that I did highlight. It's from when she was a student, and she just says, "Moments like this made me feel like surgery was such an incredible gift to be able to give someone. These two small size 6 hands of mine could one day perform operations that would make a difference in someone's life." Size 6. Now, what's interesting is in this in this book, she talks about some of the experiences of sexism and racism that she faces, usually at the hands or mouth of superior white colleagues, usually male. And some of the main critiques of the book that I've seen on Goodreads or on Twitter and stuff are from male higher surgeons or colleagues or physicians or people who used to be doctors, and they're just sort of still discrediting her experience, which I think is really unfair. And some of the critiques that they have are things such as, it wasn't that bad, or she's just weak, she's just an emotional female. And I find that almost laughable, because the whole point of her publishing her story is to tell her truth through her experience. So it clearly was that bad. And even when reading it, I tell people, it's interesting because even in the worst parts of her journey, when you're reading it, she's not flaunting it. She's still just sort of telling you it matter-of-factly. So it is very factual, and it is very, this is what happened. This is how I felt, this is what I thought, but this is what happened next. And you have to sit there and reflect with it. And so I feel like people who are trying to tell you it's not that bad haven't really read or paid attention to what she's saying in the book and what sort of outcome that would have on a person and the impact that it clearly had on her. Some people have said that the book is just sort of her bragging and seeking attention, because there's a sort of thread through the book about how she's good at what she does. And I think that's also interesting, because obviously it's just a fact that she was good. She worked hard, she was good with her hands, she could do good surgery. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to be overworked to the level that she was, because her team leaned on her more than you normally would someone in her position or hierarchy. And it's interesting that people just say, oh, she's just trying to tell you how good she is. And that's not at all the tone that I took from it. What I took from it was that she defined herself by her ability to do these surgeries and her ability to be a good doctor, which I think a lot of us are guilty of, and that's good. It makes us better and it makes us strive to be better. But for me, it was a reminder that I need to always continue to have definitions of self outside of medicine and outside of my abilities, and that's something I'm currently working on. So it was affirming to see that that's a good thing to have. So it just tells me that A, she was good, and B, there's this thread of self-definition by skill. And she really valued her ability to be a good surgeon and do good by her patients. And it wasn't in a bragging way, it was just showing if someone this good could be driven to this absolute despair, how do you expect anybody to succeed in this environment? How is anybody supposed to succeed if she's sort of the model candidate for it? I think it also touches on the amount of pressure that she's put upon herself and that she feels culturally with her Japanese background, that she has to be good and she has to be better than, and she has to improve herself and drive herself to further improvement always. And she talks about that in the book. So people saying that she's just bragging, again, aren't taking it into context. And finally, one of the complaints people have is that it's not quote unquote well written. And sure, it's very simple in her language choices, but that's because it's an autobiography. Like, you don't need complex prose or metaphor to carry you through an autobiography. It's just telling you what happened and how she experienced it and how she felt. And I think she uses really good descriptive language to tell you those things so that you feel like you were there with her. I say a lot of time it also kind of feels like you're sitting and having coffee with her and she's telling you what's been going on. And I feel like you wouldn't read an autobiography for, I don't know, something deeper to find the meaning between the lines, because it's not meant to be between the lines. It's right there. It's telling you exactly what happened. And I quite enjoyed it. I did find it to be a fairly quick read, in that I was both enthralled and interested, so kept reading more, but it also wasn't too complex, because you don't need to think to find the meaning is right there for you. You need to self-reflect on it. But yeah, I didn't find it poorly written. I quite enjoyed it. Don't go looking at an autobiography if you want Shakespeare. Talking about who should read this book or who should learn from this story. Obviously, women in medicine, particularly Asian women in medicine, Japanese women in medicine might sort of align with this experience. But I think anybody going into medicine, so all my med students looking at you, it's worth reading her story. I think any woman going into a male-dominated field, anybody going into a very intense post-vocational field, anybody on a long training pathway, pre-meds, pre-dents, pre-farms, all of those, I think pretty much anybody can kind of pull something from this book.
I also want to explicitly say that anybody who considers themselves an ally to women or women of color or Asian women, you should definitely read this book because it gives you good perspective on how they exist in a white-dominated world, a white-dominated field, and it will force you to kind of examine your own actions and your own allyship and how you can improve in that, because I know I definitely did some self-reflecting on that when it was sections where she was explaining some of the racism that she faced and how I, as someone who considers themselves an ally, could improve those environments for women like her. So that too.
Obviously it relates fairly closely to me because I feel very similar to Yumiko, but it's not going, like, I'm not going to have the same one-for-one experience, and there are other people who relate more closely, but I think there's something in it that we can all sort of take away, whether it's directly related to the medicine or it's just related to stories of self-worth, self-definition, perfectionism, and also sort of boundaries for yourself between what you're willing to give up for work or what you're willing to give or let work take from you, and how to balance that through learning when Yumiko couldn't because she physically wasn't allowed or given the space to find that balance. I think it also teaches a good lesson on burnout and finding your sort of burnout flags. Again, I think Yumiko has worked so to the bone that she couldn't even notice her burnout because she didn't even have time to stop and think. So I'm not blaming her at all for her situation. I just think it's taught me a good lesson to think of these things now before it gets to that point. And hopefully it never gets to that point. And I guess I also wanted to leave this with some wrapping up, some final thoughts is pick up the book. You should definitely read it. It is really, really great. I think it is a great opportunity to hear her story in her words, sort of full out, relatively unfiltered, and really see how bad it could get and why change needed and continues to need to happen in not just plastic surgery unaccredited registrars, not just in surgery registrars or medicine, but in a lot of fields that we pull and lean on junior staff a lot. So I think her book really speaks to that journey and her self-growth, and I think it sort of found me at the right time. And I guess the last thing I would say is that if you ever watch this, Dr. Kadota, thank you. Thank you for your bravery, for sharing this story. I know at the end of your book, you write that you're still a doctor and you still get to educate and nurture the next generation of doctors. And I think even though you may not have directly nurtured or taught me, your book and your journey have taught me a lot. And I think you have opened or sort of pushed open a lot of doors and sort of shone a light into some sort of dirty secrets or black corners that people didn't want to look at, and have hopefully ignited change for sort of my generation of future surgeons, future female doctors. And I think, as you've said in your book, we don't need stronger canaries, but I think you were a very, very strong canary, and I think you demonstrated that the problem is the coal mine, and I really want to thank you. I wish you never had to experience what you did, but thank you for your bravery in sharing it. it's just been such an important read. I have so many things that I've highlighted, and I've been sharing it with anybody who listen. And I think we can all learn something from you. So thank you. And yeah. So that's the video, short and sweet, and just something that I felt was really important to highlight and show you. Go pick up Emotional Female if you can. There's an audiobook. There is Kindle or like an e-reader book. There, you can get it in Dimmicks, all those things. This was not sponsored at all. I just really think it's an important message, and I really found the book valuable. So that's me. Like I said, I'm a third-year medical student. Make sure you subscribe if you want to see more about my journey to or my journey through med school. Give this video a like because it really helps out my channel. And comment below if you've read the book or if there are other sort of medical autobiographies or medical journey books that I can read, because I really do like reading them now that I'm in sort of the thick of it. Well, the beginning of the thick of it. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Bye.